Hello, and welcome to the DCIFF Film Chat Podcast. I'm Erin DeVos, and I'll be your host for this season. Join us for insightful interviews that explore the work of up-and-coming independent filmmakers from all over the world. If you're passionate about film and keen to learning about the creative process from the future cinema greats, this podcast is a must-listen for you. Our mission is to provide listeners with the engaging and informative conversations about successful and innovative films, including features, shorts, documentaries, animation, and web series from across the globe. The DCIFF Film Chat Podcast is a unique opportunity for independent filmmakers to have their voices heard in a way no other film festival can provide. You can listen to the DCIFF Film Chat Podcast on all podcast platforms or visit our website at DCIFF-indie.org/DCIFF-podcast. Thank you. I am excited to welcome you to a new season of the DCIFF Film Chat Podcast. I'm your host, Erin DeVos, hosting for the second season in a row. And let me tell you, I'm recording this right after we had wrapped up DCIFF 2024 and our 25th anniversary. And I feel the energy from not only these episodes that we recorded, but also the film festival itself. Was amazing to be able to bring filmmakers from across the world to be able to attend and join us live in person. And then also to have these exclusive interviews with the forum, with the Q&As after the films, and have these conversations on the podcast. So I really want to thank all the filmmakers for their time, but importantly, you as listeners and supporters of the podcast, and as well as DCIFF. It means so much to have celebrated 25 years, to keep going on this momentum. We had a few sold out shows then, and as I mentioned, a lot of the filmmakers came in from across the world, and it's just made me feel so excited for what is next in the film industry, for all these amazing filmmakers to be able to collaborate and be together, and as well as the film community in DC has just been so up and coming, and I'm very excited to see what's to come. So without further ado, want to thank you. We can dive into this week's episode. And so I have the privilege of interviewing the director, Jay Schlossberg. He is the director of Feast Your Ears, which is one of the films that we had premiered this year during DCIFF 2024. And this film is a feature-length documentary that takes you on a trip back from the 60s, 70s, and 80s with the free-form progressive FM radio was making headway in America. Broadcasting from the high-top Triangle Towers near Washington, D.C., the legendary and beloved WHFS was more than just a local radio station. It was a keystone and central point for the music and culture of the era. And we get to hear from the local, national, international musicians of the HFS DJs, record label veterans, journalists, historians, fans, and more that reflect on the time that music united a tribe who spoke out via the radio waves about war, equality, and the time of great social, cultural, and political upheaval. With that being said, I'm excited to dive into this episode where Jay and I have a conversation about the history of HFS, but also about how the film industry and radio industry kind of really collide, and how the creative process comes to light when radio, we don't really have those photos, images, and videos back in the day towards like the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So we get to learn like the creative process of being able to collaborate with others. And without further ado, let's dive into this week's episode.
I've been in the film and video industry here in Washington, D.C. for about 36 years now, since 1988. And I started my own company in 1993, which is Media Central. And what we do is we book local camera crew and gear and production support for our clients who need to film where they don't live. All over the U.S. and 114 other countries. So we do a lot of broadcast stuff. So HBO, Showtime, Discovery, all that sort of thing, either for the networks or the production companies who are doing factual doc series or factual lifestyle series or feature docs. We also work with a lot of independent producers who do features. So that's the bulk of our clientele. So that's what I've been doing. And my new role is a director and executive producer of Future Years, the story of WHFS 102.3, which has been in the works for in production. Well, it's done now, but production was around 10 years, but the idea happened about a year before we started.
Yeah, so it's been a long time coming in the sense of the how long it took you. Was it due to not only just kind of things coming up, but wanting to be able to tell your story over the past 6 years?
Yes, and yes. It took a long time, mainly because of a number of things. COVID. So I couldn't go sit with my editor, but we edited quite a bit using Skype and doing screen share, which was very cool actually. Also, my company was terribly busy, and my editor and co-producer Dick Bangham at Rick Bang Pictures, he was also really busy with projects for bands like Little Feat, the musician Nils Lofgren, who was a local in DC and has been in Bruce Springsteen's band now for 25 years or however long it's been. So he's had solo projects and they've been working on that. So we were both we'd get really busy and not be able to pick it up and then pick it up a month later. It's one of those things where it just took a lot of time. And the good part of that, the story continued, things in the story continued to reveal themselves. We did a lot of research and talked to a lot of people and did pre-interviews and we thought we had most of the story. Turns out, well, we kind of did in a general sense, but there were so many things that tied a lot of these things together that we didn't know. There was no way we could possibly know. They weren't written down anywhere. The best example I could give you would be, I don't want to give too much in the film away, but what I will say is that many people, including myself, at the beginning of this process, thought that there was a group of owners at the very end from 66 to 83. And one of them was the very famous and wonderful Jake Einstein. So he came in as an employee in 66. They've been around since 61. So I didn't hear about HFS till 70 or 71 or something. And so Jake was a big personality and really involved in the community. So his name was out there. And two of his sons worked there, Damien and David. So I'd always thought it was Jake's station, that he started it. God bless him for doing it because, wow, it's fabulous. So I didn't know until I started getting into producing the film and directing the film that actually it started 5 years before he even got there.
Oh, wow.
By two guys I'd never heard of, Johns Hopkins Applied Science Lab guys who were ham radio operators, and that's how they met. So what I'm saying is that's just one example of the more I spent time on the film trying to tell the story, things like that revealed themselves. That really, I guess I could have found it on Wikipedia. I found a lot of the stuff on the Wikipedia page for HFS was actually incorrect.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I didn't really want to base my story on that. So it's just a lot of talking to people and doing more research and people turning up. One more little thing I'll tell you about that was about 3 or 4 years into the film. So I did an email from this guy 3 or 4 years into the making of the film, who'd been at a Sunday morning flea market in Baltimore. And the first table he came to, the guy had like 100 or whatever reel-to-reel tapes, mostly unmarked. He's like, $10 for all, or whatever, something ridiculously cheap. So he's like, I'll take all this. And he took them all home. And the first reel he put on at the very beginning of the tape was Bill Tynan and Bob Carpenter are the guys who started it. The very first thing on the tape was Bob Carpenter doing a station ID in 1961.
Wow.
What are the odds?
Seriously.
And we used that in the movie, by the way. And so just, if I hadn't had that, there's a piece of the movie that wouldn't have existed. Literally, that 15 seconds, whatever it was. We steered you into that and then to the next thing. And so as time went by, I was getting photographs, audio tapes, posters, stories, So that's the good thing about it taking so long, is that there's probably some things I've still missed. I can't put everything in there anyway. So that was the good side of it taking so long.
Yeah, absolutely. You were very thorough in the fact that there was kind of unexpected surprises along the way that you found out when new information about WFHS. So that's really cool. WHFS.
Don't feel bad, because and they sometimes air those.
Oh, interesting.
There's four of them that I found. Jimmy is the one who always, he's the bass guy. He was always the one at the very end of the song he would speak. You're listening to WHFS 102.3 FM in Bethagit, Bethesda, Bethemsma. Oh, yeah, and I think I said it. Bethagit, Maryland. And they became legendary for us kids in that area to hear those on the radio, because you could never get Bethesda right.
Yeah.
And when we interviewed them for the film, to Ant in Rockville, Strathmore by Ant in Rockville, and I played one of those for them, which they'd never heard before. They'd sing it, get on the bus, and go. They didn't live here. They never heard them. So I played one of them, and they just couldn't believe it. They loved it. I said, would you like to do a new one for the movie? And they're like, hell yeah. So they did one run through, and then they did them. So it's up on YouTube. You watch it. It's just wonderful. But at the very end, Jimmy does the thing. Still got Bethesda wrong. I think he says Bethemsma or something on the video. So I told him that he did that. He laughed, thought it was hilarious. But people always get those call letters mixed up, WSHF or SHS. They just can't shit.
Yeah, no, that's funny how I slipped up on that, but also like how that turned into hearing some of the stories that DJs have done that in the past with this radio station. So, knowing like the buzz that's going around it, or we're excited to premiere this film. And this kind of reminds me, and as we were talking about a little bit about the film too, is the success and challenges, not only as your film is about like the evolution of DJing through this station, and then also this is kind of a twofold question, but how do you, based on like the film and what you have learned from there, seeing like the evolution of DJs, and kind of on top of that for filmmakers?
This was an era, what's called freeform progressive radio. And HFS was not the first, and we actually addressed that in the film. Early-ish, but they weren't the first. Probably started in 67 or so in San Francisco in terms of commercial radio. Mm-hmm. There might have been a few other public stations that were already kind of doing that a little bit, not all day, but a little bit. Mm-hmm. And maybe some college campuses that I'm not sure. But all these DJs, I see them as artists. The HFS DJs were, so they started to get into freeform in 68, added another show in the early 69. Things really took off right around Woodstock. Mm-hmm. So that was such a big event that some of the DJs from the Spirit is She show, Josh, Mark, and Sarah, went to Woodstock. They got backstage. And they got some interviews with Jerry Garcia, Neil Young, Michael Lang, who produced Woodstock, is also in the film. And Michael Lang told me there were no other DJs that recorded any interviews backstage. And so they came home with these interviews, and Woodstock was a humongous media event. I realized, you're too young, you weren't here yet. But it was everywhere, all the networks, all three of them. Time magazine, Life magazine, every major newspaper, it was everywhere. It's a huge media. And they started playing these tapes from Woodstock. So their listenership went from something like 800 or 1,000 listeners per show to like 30,000 overnight. It's like, boom. Wow. And so the management saw this was going to be a thing. They started adding more DJs. That's when Lisa came in, and then Damien Einstein and Serve, and they started making that a bigger part of their format. But here's the thing. And they went through July 1983. For that 14 or 15 year period, there were no corporate overlords. There were no advisors telling the station management what they should be playing. There was never a playlist. They could play whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, for whatever reason they wanted. So somebody wanted to play 6 songs about cheese. They figured that out, and they'd pull records from the library and put them together, or maybe their girlfriend just broke up with them, so they play a half-hour set of blues, or whatever. So they were moved by what was happening in their life or in general life overall. They have a political set or a set that was you do some social consciousness raising. So we were getting the messages from them through the music. So they weren't getting on the air and ranting and raving about politics. I'm sure they would make a comment, but they really weren't doing it that way. They were giving us the message through the artists who were creating the music, and they were putting it together in a way that you wouldn't expect. You had no idea what was coming ever, because on a typical top 40 station, or even the corporatized FM stations that could only play the same 150, 200 songs, and that was it. You kind of knew what was coming. And this way, you'd get blues or jazz, comedy, classical, bluegrass, folk music, rock music, blues rock, Cajun music, whatever. And they could sometimes mix these different styles together. Sometimes they'll play 3 songs and list one line from a comedy record, literally just one line, and then go to another song. And that line, that common line, has something to do with the story they're telling in the 6 or 8 songs. So they were really artists in the moment, picking the music. They may have sometimes had forethought about, that would be a good set, and they'd make some notes about that, the book of lists they call it, but they were never told what to play. And so that's what was beautiful about that. Sometimes hear things you weren't expecting to hear or needed to hear, or we just entertain you or enlighten you or teach you about a whole subculture of music you never even heard before. So that was the great thing about it. I set out to make a freeform progressive documentary about a freeform progressive radio station. And I didn't know whether I was successful at all, because, I've seen it 500 times. And so, it's hard to be outside of that and see what it really was. And from the screenings that we did, it went over great in Paris. I wasn't able to make that. Adele, one of the DJs, she went in my stead. And there were some people who came up to the festival director as they were clearing the theater out for the next film. Parisians spoke no English at all, so we subtitled the movie. Had no idea what WHFS was, much less Bethesda, Maryland. No clue. And they came up and said things like, what a great movie. Thanks for running this. Or, wow, that movie was just, I couldn't believe it. But one guy came up to the festival director and said, that movie was great. Why don't you have more movies like this? And I realized I must have hit on something, because something universal. Because these were people who were younger, no idea, but maybe they love American music and the blues, and they heard things that they really liked. I don't know. But we got a pretty good response at Woods Hole up in Cape Cod in July. And then Mill Valley back in October in Marin County. It was a pretty big turnout and great response. They laughed in places that I was hoping they were going to laugh. And they would cheer in certain spots, and so it was really, really great. It seemed like we did pretty well in terms of getting that message across. But other filmmakers and the process of making films, I really can't address that. This is my first, possibly my last. Who knows? But it's hard for me to address how other filmmakers feel about that and their process. My process was to try to emulate something that doesn't have a picture, radio, and make it visual, but give you the kind of feelings that we got listening to the radio. Does that make sense?
That does. No, I think you answered the question beautifully. I know this is your first feature film, but I feel that really does touch on what we're looking for today, in the sense of audience and, really finding what moves us. And as you said, bringing radio to film is something that we don't really see very often. And the fact that it has connected well on an international scale too, where it feels relatable, but at the same time showcasing the history of the station too. So with the filmmaking, I feel storytelling really tells it all, and the fact that this has impacted so many people, and especially this area too of the DMV. It's really enlightening to see, and it's something different. And I think that's what a lot of filmmakers are doing nowadays, is trying to figure out what stands out against the noise. And you were successful in that. Absolutely.
Special credit to my editor, who was also in charge of all the motion graphics, Dick Bangham, the Brick Bank Pictures, because we didn't have any footage.
Hmm.
Nobody had iPhones in 1972, much less camcorders.
Right.
We did get a little bit of 8 millimeter film from like 1980 or 81 that we use in the movie, about 15, 20 seconds roughly. But basically, we had no film. And so we really had to cobble together posters and bumper stickers and buttons and photographs and, all kinds of media. We had to find it. And then Dick had to create a lot of it.
Hmm.
When we're interviewing Jerry Garcia at Woodstock, which is in the film, there is no Jerry Garcia. We don't have video. So he had to animate that somehow. So there's several places where we did that, and we'd use other media, get in and out of a particular scene, and a great credit to him.
Yeah.
He did an amazing job.
Ah, well, that's incredible. And yeah, to mix like, well, I say live action, but the documentary scene, like, and also animation, that's wonderful that you wove into that. Thinking about the name of your movie, Feast Your Ears, what inspired you to name the movie?
One of the things about HFS was the DJs came up with these slogans: bigger than a breadbox radio, flagship of the FM rock and roll network. And then this one, so they were in Bethesda on the second floor of a residential apartment building called the Triangle Towers, 4853 Cordell Avenue. It's still there. And so we don't know who came up with this, but basically whatever DJ said this probably was, I'm da da da. And you're listening to WHFS 102.3 FM, Bethesda, Maryland, high atop the Triangle Towers.
Oh,
And in fact, if you're in Bethesda at any point and you're in that neighborhood, the tower is still on top of the tower.
oh, wow.
So the cat radio logo,
Hmm.
which you've seen,
No.
was designed in 1975 by Nick Nicholson and was the cover for the original WHFS Homegrown Recipes Cookbook. It was a vegetarian cookbook that they did in 1975. All of the recipes were sent in by listeners. So you had, salads and desserts and, dinners and all kinds of things. So Nick came up with that. When we were doing the movie, I was thinking that would make a great logo. And so I have a copy of the cookbook, and I found that the artist's name was Philip Nicholson. Nobody knew where he was. It had been 40 years. I looked on Google and I tried to find him. I found like 400 Philip Nicholsons. But I found one who was a graphic designer in Sweden. So I thought, wow, no, it wasn't him. So I think it was NRBQ, might have been Jesse Colin Young, I forget. Did a concert at the Bethesda Blues and Jazz in Bethesda, which is now the Bethesda Theater. We had, T-shirts and stuff we were doing. The place was sold out. We didn't get reviewed on the Washington Post or anything, but it got a lot of buzz. Somebody called him and he emailed me and said, "Hi, I'm Nick Nicholson." And so I'm like, "Oh my God." So we met up. He allowed us use full use of the logo. But the Feast Your Ears was, I think, one of the posters or bumper stickers generated in the mid to late 70s. So just one of their mottos, Feast Your Ears. I kind of put it together with the cat radio, and we added on the story of WHFS 102.3 FM because there was another HFS. After they closed and sold in 1983, Jake Einstein, who I mentioned earlier, took his share of the money and went to Annapolis and bought two sister stations, WNAV AM and WLOM FM. And then 3 or 4 months later, they launched WLOM 99.1. Some of the DJs went with Jake, Weasel, Adele, Damien, probably David, Bob here, H-E-R-A, that's a whole other story. Bob Schauker, otherwise known as Bob here. John Hall, I think. So a lot of them went to that station, but it started as WLOM 99.1. And at some point, we don't know whether it's 2 weeks or 2 months or something, Jake Einstein was granted the WHFS colors by the FCC. And that's how 99.1 was born, which went on for 5 or 6 years in Annapolis, something like that. And then Jake sold his stake to a large corporation and eventually got moved to PG County. And they had these HF Festival concerts every year. It became a whole other thing. But it was pretty much totally corporatized at that point. So I wanted to just make a delineation between the original HFS and the Fez that wanted 2.3. And then what came after was, that's somebody else's movie. And at the end of the film, we mentioned some of the things I just told you about being sold and that sort of thing. So that's kind of how the whole title came together. But it just sort of hit me. I don't know when the Feast Your Ears really, really came up for me. I don't have a moment that I can recall. I know the moment that I got the idea for the movie, but not why that popped into my head. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, no, I thought it was very catchy in the fact that, feasting your ears, like kind of like feasting in, absorbing all the content throughout the years. So that's kind of where I took the title.
Well, that's very accurate. I mean, that's what it was all. It was radio. All you have is your ears.
Right. Exactly. And then the final question that I had for you is what best advice do you want to share filmmakers like yourself who are just starting out creating their first film?
Not in any particular order. First 3 things you need to do about whatever your topic is going to be, doesn't matter what it is. 3 things I would put first is research. Because as I told you earlier, I was learning things all along the way. And so the more you front load what you could possibly know, just makes it easier to lay the story out. As you do interviews, you do learn new things. And so you can adapt to that, but know your subject matter as best as you can before you delve in. That's the first thing. The other first thing is if you're, you have to be a young filmmaker, but a beginning filmmaker, whether you're 20 or 60, doesn't really matter, is to associate yourself with people who can give you great advice, to be on your team full time, or to get you off the ground. Just sort of what happened with one of the people that we brought on, a woman named Mary Culpepper, just wonderful. Gave me some great advice, basically to like how to get the plane off the ground. And she was really great at that. And then she, kind of went on and did some other things. But I had a brilliant editor with Dick and graphics and a good storyteller. And we brought some, I think, Weasel and the DJs as the consulting producer, Richard Harrington, formerly of the Washington Post and Unicorn Times and other newspapers that were here in the DC area, Quicksilver Times, who had a broad understanding of what the story could be and should be, and just really great advisors about how to tell the story and what's important in the story, and to give you feedback along the way in case you sort of, you kind of wander off into the jungle somewhere. So those are the 2 big things: is research and bringing people on who know more than you do, potentially, about how to get through the steps to get to the end.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I think that's really great advice. And is there anything that I didn't ask that you would like to share?
I forgot. I have a rich uncle
Oh.
who loves to give money away.
Yeah.
So what was that question?
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I was just gonna, that was all really great. And, budgeting definitely comes into play when it comes to indie films. So I totally understand that. And then the last question I had for you was there anything that I didn't ask that you wanted to share?
No, I don't think so. But what I do want to say is that I made this film because I couldn't not make this film. Once I got the idea and I realized that no one had done this story, this is a story that really needed to be told. It's really special on so many levels. And this station has touched so many lives through the decades. Here we are, 40 years after it went off the air, and we're still talking about it. When I'm making a movie, but people were talking about it anyway because it's affected their lives for the last 40 or 50 years. That music, things they learned, friendships, people that they met, And a perfect example of that would be one of the things that HFS offered to the community were things like josh board, ride board. Steve's going to Tacoma Park. If anybody can give Steve a ride, call him at this number. Housing board. And I remember in 1979, I put an ad on there. It said, Jay and Eileen have a room to rent in Mount Airy, Maryland. And called da 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 da. And the first call was this friend, now friend Larry. He's been a friend for 45 years.
Mhm.
So that putting that ad up, he heard it, friend for 45 years. So it's interwoven into so many lives. And I know personally, I'm passing on some of this music I heard there to my grandson, who's really big into the blues and some other stuff. And so I've been sharing music with him. He wouldn't even know where to discover it.
Mhm.
And he's now into vinyl. So it's really, I'm passing this on, and I'm trying to honor the DJs, these artists, the Bill and Bob who started the station, final group of owners, Bernie and Phil Margolius, and all the other, and Jake, Margaret Rosenblum, and Jim Bierbauer, the final group, all the people who advertise on the stations, the nightclubs, the record stores, the head shops, the surplus stores, all those kinds of places all became this big community from this little 2,300 watt station, on the second floor of a residential apartment building. And I wanted to honor all them and the fans, everybody. It's really a love letter to everybody, the best way I can tell it. And every single thing and every single person can't be in it. It's just I only have 90 minutes. But I wanted to honor all these people, gave their hearts and souls and love and joy and all that, and try to give them something.
No, I mean, it's truly a gift and, to so many people in the DMV and beyond as you have, showcased your film. I'm really excited that we got to have the chance to chat with each other today. And where can people find you and follow you?
We have a website, which is feastyourearsthefilm.com. The original fundraising trailer is still there. Some of the media coverage we had is still there. The people on the team, there's some merch. Buy it now. So that's one place you can donate there if you feel like donating. We're going to still need a little bit of help in the distribution. So if somebody wants to make a donation, there's a big yellow button. If you want to sign up for the mailing list, there's another big yellow button for that. There's a number of pages on Facebook. The main page is Feast Your Ears, the film on Facebook. A fan page popped up called Tribute to the Old WHFS. And we're just about to, and I didn't start it, but there's almost 10,000 people on that page. There's about 30,000 on the Feast Your Ears page. Another fan page popped up of Friends of Feast Your Ears. And there's a number of other connected pages, the Psychedelic. He grew up in Bethesda, Chevy Chase. He grew up in Montgomery County. And those sort of things those are all places that are interconnected with our page. And we do have a Twitter page. I don't do a lot there. I guess I should call it X. I don't do much there.
I feel that.
But best place to go to start is the website. And then if you're on Facebook, the Feast Your Ears page or the tribute to the old HFS page. Then you'll know what's going on.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to, keep following you and, learning more from you and showcasing your film later this week.
I can't wait. It's going to be a raucous and boisterous crowd, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, yeah.
We, if I can say this, we did a one-off fundraiser in September in Frederick. Half the money went to the Weinberg. It's the Weinberg Theater in Frederick. 501c3, so half the money went to them. The other half the money went to Women in Film DC.
Oh, wow.
So we were expecting about 150 people or maybe 200 if we got lucky. And the final head count was 658.
Oh, wow. That's impressive.
Mind blown. It was unbelievable. And how people were reacting to the film was one of the most heartwarming days of my life. It was just incredible. And so now to have this in DC, kind of right across the line from Bethesda and Chevy Chase, close in, I'm hoping everybody has a great time. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. No, looking forward to it. And it's definitely going to be really
Last
fun.
I heard, it was about 75 or 80% sold out, but that was about 4 or 5 days ago.
Yeah, we're nearly at sellout. So you're right there.
Thank you for this. I really, from the bottom of my heart, really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And you're the first interview for the film festival. So I'm really excited to kick this off and to share it, but also to congratulate Feast Your Ears for winning Best Feature Documentary at DCIFF 2024. Congratulations. This podcast is brought to you by the DCIFF supporters. We could not be here without all of you to be sharing this amazing outlet with filmmakers from around the world. If you are interested in supporting DCIFF, head on over to our website through the link description in the bio of this episode, or you can go right to the website, which is DCIFF-INDIE.org, to connect with us and learn more about our Future of Film programs, our festival, and also more educational opportunities in what we do with our high school students, community, and beyond. We look forward to your support.